There is no doubt that this is a great camera for beginners, but can it be good for professionals also? It only has one setting. Okay, before we jump into this camera, I have to go over a few disclosures. First, I was paid to make this video by Moment, but I could have covered anything. In fact, I already planned on making this video at some point, but please don't tell them that. Secondly, they have no influence over what I say about this camera, and when I told them I was going to include this disclosure about my potential biases, they had no problem with it whatsoever. I do want to acknowledge that it is in my best interest to present this camera in its best light. I'm a huge fan of Willem Verbeek, the creator of this camera, and his brand Long Weekend. With all that out of the way, hi Moment Channel, my name is Jericho. I am a working stills photographer and DP, and let's talk about this camera. For me to actually want to pick up and use a camera, it needs to fall into one of two categories. It either needs to be extremely high-end with all the settings at my fingertips, or it needs to be so simple and easy to use that I don't even have to think about it. This camera fully and truly falls into that second category. I mean, it's got fixed settings, fixed focus, and it has one switch that turns the flash on or off. That's it. Today I am just doing a little bit of walking around testing the Long Weekend camera. I have 400 ISO film and it is cloudy. Just as I ran out of film, double rainbow. Perfect timing. Okay, real quick, let's talk specs. So we have 1/120th shutter. This is fixed and you cannot change it. We have a fixed f9 31mm focus-free lens. So if it's in focus, it's in focus. If it's not, you can't change that. But most things are in focus because this is a disposable lens with that really tight aperture. Most things will be in focus if they are past the minimum focus distance, which seems to be decently close actually. The camera also has a flash that's on or off. That is powered by this single AAA battery, which is nice to see that it's not an old school battery that's hard to find or expensive. And other than that one battery, that is the only thing in this camera that's not mechanical. We have winding, physical button, and rewinding is also manual. Unfortunately, I will say that this camera has a very simple viewfinder with no frame lines. I much prefer to see a camera with frame lines so I know exactly where I'm taking the photo. Although this one doesn't seem too far off, just using the edge of the frame, and the actual viewfinder is decently bright. We also have a 1/4-20 here on the bottom. It works pretty well, I already tested that out. And although it's very small, this grip feels really high quality and comfortable in the hand. It's slightly rubberized and it gives you a decent grip. It's up there. Be interesting. Take a photo with the Nikon F. Something that's cool is having really deep focus is like, it's not very common. I often have this at f2 or f2.8, and this is locked at f9. It's a different look, and I think people actually enjoy it more than they realize. We're in the mountains of the San Bernardino National Forest. This is not like the recent crazy LA fires. This was a few months before these burned. But yeah, kind of sad, but kind of pretty, so. Just love these logs. So this camera is obviously really good for beginners, but let's talk about why. One of the first major hurdles that can stop you in your tracks when starting out with photography is all the complicated settings. It can be really frustrating when your phone is taking better pictures than your fancy new camera because your phone's all automatic and it's doing crazy image stacking in HDR. For me, a camera like this does a really good job of stripping the daunting complexity of settings while still teaching someone the importance of lighting and framing. And let's not forget the magic of film. There is something so amazing and magical about the delayed gratification of film. Waiting to see how your photos turned out and finding those little happy accidents in the scans. But when you're talking about film, there's a trade-off. It's expensive. It's one of the bigger downsides of this camera when it comes to a beginner photographer. It's a lot of money to invest. However, when you do invest that money, each photo is more precious and important, and you treasure them more later. Jacob Slay. After shooting 3 rolls, here are some of the things I've noticed. Because we are looking at a camera that is essentially a reusable, disposable camera, that is the aesthetic you're gonna get. Overall, sharpness is not gonna be phenomenal. This happens almost anytime you have an everything's in focus type of lens. Also, I ran into, on my second roll and on my second roll only, quite a few light leaks, which I do think is probably from user error. Again, it kind of lends into that disposable camera look. These happy accidents, they happen. So actually on my third roll of film, I had a few issues with the film slipping while I was trying to advance it. I had some trouble loading that roll though, so I'm wondering if it's just an issue with that specific roll of film. It didn't stop me from shooting the roll, obviously, but I just wanted to mention regardless that I had a couple times just like the film not advancing smoothly and having to wind it a few extra times. What you should expect is the classic disposable camera look, because essentially that is what you're shooting with. Yo, what up? We are at the Flower District. I'm loading a roll of Portra 400, and we're gonna add some of these shots throughout the video, so stay tuned. Yay, we got it. Earlier in this video, I posed the question, could this camera be good for professionals as well as beginners? As professionals, we are constantly thinking about cameras, adjusting settings, changing lighting, all of those things combined just in our heads forever. Something like this that strips all that away makes me feel like what I felt like when I first started photography and my mom handed me like a disposable camera. I wasn't thinking about anything except what was in front of the lens, what was through the viewfinder. And that just like rekindles this like pure creative joy of just taking pictures. And I really like the windy sound it makes. It's like 50% of the reason why I like this camera. Huh. Well, if you like that video, please subscribe. There will be more. And bye forever.